Whiplash and confusion among leaders in Munich, topping our world lead as President Trump and his cabinet espouse what critics say are something closer to the Kremlin's talking points on Russia's three-year onslaught against Ukraine. European leaders today were hoping for reassurance that President Trump understood how they view the Russian threat. And after the president said this week, Ukraine, quote, may be Russian someday, unquote, said that he trusted Russian leader Vladimir Putin when it comes to Ukraine, and even blamed Russia's invasion of Ukraine on former President Biden, discussing whether Ukraine could someday join NATO. That just happened yesterday. With European allies concerned that those comments resemble Putin's views of the conflict, European leaders had hoped that they were maybe missing something. And then today they heard a speech by Vice President JD Vance at the Munich Security Conference, in which the Vice President rebuked U.S. allies in Europe and signaled support for Europe's far-right parties. Take a listen.
The threat that I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China, it's not any other external actor. And what I worry about is the threat from within. If you're running in fear of your own voters, there is nothing America can do for you. Speaking up and expressing opinions isn't election interference. Even when people express views outside your own country, and even when those people are very influential.
CNN's chief international anchor, Christiane Amanpour, is in Munich, and she spent the day speaking with world leaders. Christiane, good to see you. What are world leaders telling you about how they viewed Vice President Vance's speech?
Well, honestly, it was stunned silence to a lot of it, quite a lot of shock in the room. There were a lot of senior delegates there. Afterwards, the German defense minister basically said his words were, quote, unacceptable. A Spanish delegate said it was indecent. But on the other hand, they did like the fact that he did say NATO was here to stay, that the United States viewed it as a very strong, transatlantic alliance, and they took that good part of his speech, so to speak. But it was meant to be, they thought, going to be about mostly Ukraine and how to implement the Trump potential peace plan with Putin. But instead, it was a speech really that amounted to diving deep into the cultural, political, and ideological wars. I spoke to the NATO Secretary General, who apparently has a pretty good relationship with President Trump. He's the former Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte, and he wouldn't be drawn on exact negotiations with Vladimir Putin, saying, we don't want to let Vladimir Putin sit back in his armchair in the Kremlin and know what we're going to do. So I kind of pressed him on that. Here's what he said. You will admit that already President Trump has telegraphed to him as he sits in his Kremlin armchair that he agrees with Putin's position on Ukraine never joining NATO. This is something that NATO promised Ukraine at your last summit in Washington, that its future was in NATO. Is that off the table?
But President Trump, when he was campaigning, also had some clear statements on the same issue. So you cannot be too surprised. And as you said, indeed today there was a clear statement from the White House and others that all options are on the table, and I am just pleading for a situation where we try to really make that part of the negotiations, whatever will happen. And then the key issue is how to make sure that he will not try again, that you will not have a repeat of what happened as you have covered in 2014, 2015, which was a total failure.
So security guarantees are the big issue, and that is what is unclear, absolutely unclear from Hegseth, from Vance, from Trump, from anybody. Nobody quite knows what these vital security guarantees are to prevent Putin from trying again, because we've seen his appetite in the past. Now, I'm going to be speaking to President Volodymyr Zelensky on stage here at the Munich Security Conference tomorrow, and we'll report back after that, Jake.
All right, excellent work. Thank you so much, Christiane Amanpour. That should be an interesting interview. Joining us now from Munich, Republican Congressman Mike Turner from Ohio. He's on the House Armed Services Committee, was the chair of the House Intelligence Committee, and he's heading up the U.S. House delegation at the Munich Security Conference. Congressman, good to see you. You met with Zelensky today. What did he have to say?
Good evening, Jake. Well, Jake, he was very upbeat. In fact, not only was he just upbeat, he's well on the elements of what could go in a deal. And I was very taken aback by the fact that people's reactions to JD Vance's speech. I couldn't have imagined that anybody expected JD Vance was going to take this stage and outline the principles of a deal. You don't negotiate a deal at Munich. Munich is where you coalesce. You bring people together beyond, together around, principles. And those principles are: we're supporting Ukraine. We're going to bring peace. We're going to bring Putin to the table. That deal is going to have to be negotiated between Zelensky, the United States, and Putin. And there's a lot of work yet to be done.
The Washington Post is reporting, Josh Rogan, that your delegation presented President Zelensky with a piece of paper for him to sign that would have granted the U.S. rights to 50% of Ukraine's future mineral reserves. Rogan reports, quote, Zelensky politely declined to sign it, unquote. Is that correct?
No, our delegation did not. So our delegation includes 17 senators, 15 members of the House, of which I lead. We did discuss that issue with President Zelensky. He's very eager to get U.S. investment for both the mineral and other energy resources that are in Ukraine. He sees it as a way to both bring in future security guarantees, but also future investment into Ukraine. He is in discussions with the White House about those resources and what they mean really for the future of the economy and for the relationship between the U.S. and Ukraine. I think they're very important for Ukraine's future, but of course that means there has to be peace. In order for people to be able to make an investment, in order for those resources to be extracted, in order for them to have economic impact, you have to have peace.
So no one in the delegation presented him with a piece of paper to sign?
No, we did not, no.
Senator Roger Wicker, who's the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, said in an interview with Politico that Pete Hegseth saying up front, before any peace negotiations have started, that Ukraine can't be a member of NATO, that Ukraine can't go back to 2014 borders. He said that was a rookie mistake. He said the comments were disturbing. What did you think of what Secretary Hegseth said?
Well, I think it's certainly premature for anyone to put down any elements of a deal. And I think certainly everything needs to be on the table. That's how you get a deal. Certainly the issues of NATO and the future of NATO for Ukraine needs to be open. Similarly, where those boundaries lie need to be open. Those are part of the negotiations. President Trump himself have left them open, and they need to, certainly we don't need members of the cabinet of President Trump's cabinet to be defining those in the public. That's what's going to be part of the negotiations. President Zelensky's discussions with us today was that all of those need to be part of the negotiations, and certainly they relate to really the future of Ukraine and its viability and its sovereignty and its security.
We also heard some European leaders expressing displeasure with Vice President Vance signaling some support for far-right political parties in Europe. Take a listen to this excerpt.
But what no democracy, American, German, or European, will survive is telling millions of voters that their thoughts and concerns, their aspirations, their pleas for relief are invalid or unworthy of even being considered. Democracy rests on the sacred principle that the voice of the people matters. There's no room for firewalls.
Vice President Vance also urged the Europeans to end their opposition to anti-immigration parties such as Germany's far-right AfD party, which has been characterized by the German government as a suspected extremist party. Now, we know Vice President Vance met with the leader of AfD today. What do you make of all this?
Well, I think these are just continuing themes that Vance has advanced, I think, within certainly the Republican Party. But I think, as we look to European political parties, they're going to have to work these issues out themselves.
All right, Congressman Mike Turner, always good to see you. Enjoy yourself in Munich there. Must be a pretty cool experience. Really appreciate your time here.
A lot of work to do here, Jake. Thank you.